And we're live. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Happy Hour. Hope y'all are having a fabulous week and had a great weekend. I don't know where y'all are at if you're watching, but here in Chicago, it's beautiful. It's been beautiful the last 2 days, which has made an enormous difference in my mood. And I forget how much I need the sun. So welcome. Today's show sponsored by Lift Apparel. Lift Apparel is a conscious clothing brand that aims to spread love and support mental health. So all of the shirts that we produce, just like this one, come with simple, loving messages rooted in kindness and compassion. 10% of the profits from all of the sales go to support mental health advocacy organizations. And it is just a really cool organization. So I will drop the link in the comments below, along with a discount code to get 10% off your next purchase. So today we're talking about your comfort zone, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. And I was really looking forward to getting on and jamming about your comfort zone, because I think about the work that I'm involved in as a coach and as someone in the personal development space. And so much of the work that I do with people in one form or another ties back to their comfort zones. So being cognizant of where that is, and then actively and intentionally taking steps to expand their comfort zone. And for me, this conversation around comfort zones started when I was in high school, because middle school, early high school was very afraid of everything and everyone. And through the swim team, actually, through sports in high school, started to push the edges of my comfort zone. So started to put myself out there more, started to make more friends, started to just do things that I hadn't previously. And what I noticed was it gave me a sense of confidence, a lot more confidence, a lot more assuredness, a lot more feeling of being empowered. And so when I went to college, same deal. I basically said, I'm going to take this experience and turn it all the way up to 11. And pretty much my whole goal throughout college, and really since college, has been, how do I systematically look at where my comfort zone stops, or starts rather, and how do I take on activities and practices and exercises to expand the edges of my comfort zone? Because again, every time I do it, I notice that I feel more empowered. I feel like I can trust myself more. I feel like I'm more capable of going out and creating things. And I also notice that I am more comfortable in my own skin. This, for example, is something that was outside of my comfort zone for a long time. Like the idea of getting on and going live for 30 minutes and just jamming about whatever came up was very confronting. But since that point, I've taken on many challenges, many activities. I've done a lot of speaking, done a lot of webinars. I did a challenge a couple of months ago where I went live on Instagram every day for 30 days and was just looking at, how do I continue to get more comfortable? Because I like this. I like doing this. I like doing these kinds of activities. It's fun for me. The intention is to create an impact and to create value for people. And I'm able to do that more effectively when my comfort zone is larger. For what I can note or notice about my approach to my comfort zone, like I mentioned, is I feel like I started to address it so regularly that it became habit. Like leaving my comfort zone, pushing the edges of my comfort zone became a habit. And the nice part about that was, when I was presented with an opportunity that felt confronting, that felt scary, that I maybe in the past would have run away from, what I was able to do was actually take the emotion out of it, set it aside, and look at it rather objectively in terms of what's to be gained by going through this experience. I did that a lot in college. So taking on leadership positions, opportunities to speak in public, which if that's not something that you're comfortable with, I would highly encourage you to look for opportunities to do it. It just makes everything that much better. But what I started to do was actually look at it systematically and say, how can I take the things that I'm afraid of, and because I understand the opportunity and the growth on the other side of those things that I'm afraid of, how do I start to go out and systematically address those things, start to go out and systematically take those things on? So in a sense, leaving my comfort zone became something that was inside of my comfort zone. Like I just started to do it so consistently. And I started to understand that outside of the emotional experience of it, the growth, the opportunity, the possibility in regularly doing those things was worth it, because my life continued to get better each time it would happen. I would get more confident as a result. I would get clearer on who I am as a result. Like I mentioned, I'd be able to trust myself more. I would feel more capable. I think one of the brilliant things about leaving your comfort zone regularly is that it starts to show you who you really are. Because what ends up happening a lot of times is, you think about the way that we build our lives and the way that we build our social circles. And oftentimes what happens is we take who we currently believe ourselves to be, our identity, what we like, what we don't like, what we think that we're capable of, and we build that into our life experience. It becomes a part of how we choose the career that we take on. It becomes part of how we build relationships with other people, a significant other, our friends. So it's almost like we take who we currently believe ourselves to be, we build that into our life externally. So it's reflecting that back to us, which is nice because it's comfortable. It feels normal. It feels like we have a sense of groundedness and identity in the world, which is really important. But the potential downside of that is that it can keep you from growing, because you stay in the same situation. It tends to be not stagnant, but in a state of homeostasis. So everything stays balanced. Everything stays pretty similar. And so if you're looking to grow, if you're looking to create something different for yourself, personally, in your relationships, in your money, in your career, it's very difficult to do if you're trying to take action inside of this life that you built based on who you were in the past. And so the brilliant part about your comfort zone is when you leave your comfort zone, you start to shed some of that. You step out of those things. You step out of who you currently believe yourself to be. You step out of those relationships. You step out of those environments. You actually find yourself in a situation that you've never been in before, which is brilliant. It's great. Because if you are somewhere that you've never been before, you don't have any conceptions about how it's supposed to go. And in those situations, you then get a very real and authentic, if you choose to look at it that way, a very real and authentic perspective on who you are, what you want to be about, and the things that you want to do. And so leaving your comfort zone consistently gives you opportunities to reassess basic assumptions that you have about yourself. And if things aren't working for you, reinvent those things or transform those things. It was a big thing when I graduated from college. I moved to San Francisco, which at the time, funny enough, I thought, oh, this will be naively, I thought, oh, this will be easy. This will be fine. But it was really difficult. It was very, very difficult because I moved from this very tight-knit social circle and community where I was very comfortable and I knew exactly how everything was supposed to go. And I knew exactly who I was inside of all these relationships. And I moved across the country where I didn't know anybody. None of that familiarity was there. None of that comfort was there. So everything that I was doing, I was basically doing for the first time. And while that was really difficult, and at some points, sort of, I guess, discombobulating is a good word to use. It was also a really valuable experience because I left the comfort, because I left what was normal, because I left what was routine. I then had the opportunity to reassess all these basic assumptions that I had about myself that I just took for granted in the last experience. Like, who do I want to be in my life? How do I want to relate to people? How do I want to ask for help? How do I want to relate to my future and my work? Is this who I want to be in my life? Is this how I want my life to go? And I had to do the work in recreating those pieces, those relationships, those environments, those parts of myself. But I got to recreate it in the image of a more authentic version of me. Said another way, I got to build it from the ground up, design it from the ground up, based on a more accurate picture of who I am, what I like, and what I enjoy. And it's been the same thing. I regularly and actively look for opportunities to do that. Maybe not as extreme as moving, to the other side of the country, but leaving programs, joining programs, going to different events, starting new businesses, leaving businesses, building new relationships, leaving old relationships. It's like this constant conversation about how do I get involved in new scenarios and environments so that I learn more about myself, because ultimately that's really what this conversation is about. This conversation around comfort zone. It's about self-growth. It's about self-learning. You can't really learn anything new if you're just continuing to do all of the things that are comfortable for you and all the things that are familiar and all the things that you know. You need that contrast. You need something different. And if you're unhappy with how it's currently going, it's very difficult to get perspective on why it is the way that it is, or even more importantly, how it could go. It's very important to do and very hard to do that if you're staying in the exact same spot. And so that change, that transformation, creating the new career, creating the new life, creating the new relationships, takes doing uncomfortable things, very uncomfortable things. So there's a couple questions, which is perfect. And the first question was from Amber. She says, what are good ways to motivate myself to step out of my comfort zone instead of staying comfortable? This is a great question, Amber. Thank you so much for asking it. So a couple things that came up when I was thinking about this question. The first is, I think that discomfort is easier, or it's easier to subject ourselves to discomfort when there's some aspect of fun involved. So for example, one thing that I really love doing is I really love improv. Really love improv. And at first, it was super uncomfortable. I remember being in class and being very afraid of saying the wrong thing, being judged, not being funny, whatever it was. It's a very uncomfortable experience. Same thing with getting up on stage and performing for the first time. But the piece that made it easier was that it was a very fun experience. For those of you who have done improv, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's an environment where you get to play. And discomfort through play is not necessarily the most pleasurable experience, but it helps you forget what you're doing. Versus if you're just trying to go straight on into doing something uncomfortable, it might be overwhelming. It might take you out. You might stop short of actually doing it. So look for ways to make leaving your comfort zone more fun. And on that point too, like look for ways to do it with other people, because left to our own devices, we as people, we as human beings tend to stay with what's comfortable. We tend to do the thing that we know. We tend to avoid the thing that is scary or that brings us fear. And so if we're around other people who are encouraging us to do something scary, it's going to be way easier to actually take it on and do it. We'll be confident that even if something doesn't go the way that we hoped that it would, will be held, so to speak, or will still be loved. And it's just a great source of accountability. It's also the reason why I have had a coach since 2016 and likely won't ever not have a coach that I'm working with. Because I know, left to my own devices, I'm going to do the thing that's comfortable. I'm going to play it small. I'm going to stay safe, because that's just what's natural. It's a very, very human thing. To this question too, on good ways to quote unquote motivate yourself to step out of your comfort zone. I think it's important to distinguish this conversation around taking action from a place of feeling, like feelings, versus coming from a place of commitment. Because sometimes what can happen is we'll say, well, I don't necessarily feel like leaving my comfort zone, or I want to wait until I feel better to do this thing, start this business, go out in public, speak, ask this person on a date, whatever it is. And that's a really easy way to stay stuck, because feelings are fleeting. Feelings are a version of the truth, but they're not the truth. And they tend to be they can be rather unpredictable. So they're not the best tool to use to make decisions around leaving your comfort zone. Versus if we were in a conversation around commitment, it's a much stronger conversation. Let's say we were talking about starting a business, for example. For a lot of people, that's uncomfortable, putting themselves out there, asking for money, etc. And it's outside of a lot of people's comfort zones. The one way to approach it is, well, I don't feel like putting up my website yet. I don't feel like letting people know that I've started this business yet, or asking people to hire me yet. And when we're in a conversation around feelings, it tends to get pushed. The date gets pushed if it happens at all. Versus I'm making a commitment to start this business. Here's by when it's going to happen. And now that I'm choosing from a place of commitment, even if I don't necessarily feel like it, I'm going to go do it. Because I said I was going to go do it. And because I want that thing more than I want to stay stuck where I am right now. And so when we're looking at it through the lens of commitment, if we're looking at taking action, even if you don't necessarily feel like it, one thing to think about, and one tool that can be helpful, is just looking at what is the next best step, or what is the smallest step that you can use to move forward. It's the difference between saying like, hey, I'm going to launch my business website tomorrow. If that feels overwhelming, it's like, hey, I'm going to update or create the homepage for my business tomorrow. It's just looking at like, what is the winnable game that you can play that still has you leaving your comfort zone and has you making forward progress. Because that's the name of the game, is progress. You're moving forward. And what I find is, as you start to take more of those baby steps, like as long as you're moving forward, you start to build momentum. Momentum starts to build. And what I find a lot of times is that momentum actually begets motivation. So it's not necessarily about feeling motivated to go out and do the thing from the get-go. It's you build momentum by taking smaller steps, taking smaller baby steps, and then you feel motivated, you feel excited to do it. I notice this a lot when I sit down to work in the morning. Sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like working today. Like, I don't really feel like starting this thing that I said that I was going to do, this bigger thing that I said that I was going to do. And so instead of avoiding it, or instead of doing it right then and there and pushing up this huge wall of resistance and hating it the whole time that I'm doing it, I just say, I'm just going to start with a couple small things. I'm just going to send some emails. I'm just going to do whatever. And over time, I feel more motivated. I feel more excited to go after that larger piece. So if you're looking for ways to motivate yourself to step outside of your comfort zone, a couple things to recap: make it more fun. Find ways that you can make it more fun. Do it with other people, include other people, whether that's friends, whether that's a coach that you are working with who is holding you accountable to going out and doing those things. And just take a look at like, what's the next best step? What's the next smallest step that you can take in service of creating this particular thing? Because I think the thing that's important to remember too, and it's so funny because I was just talking about this in a Clubhouse room, is that sometimes we feel like, well, there's this fear in the way, or there's like this imposter syndrome in the way. And so I'm just going to wait for that to leave. Or like, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to change it. I'm going to fix it so it's not there anymore so that I can take action. And it's a losing game because the fear will continue to be there. The imposter syndrome will continue to be there. I've been at this for 4 years and I still feel like an imposter sometimes. So it's less about waiting for that to change and more about what are you willing to take on? What are you willing to do with the understanding that those things might not necessarily leave. So I hope that's helpful. Give you a couple places to look. Thanks, Amber, for the question. Great question. Bob Conlin, Boblin asks another question. Says, how do we create survival in order to stay inside of our comfort zone? So in terms of survival, and I think this is what Bob is saying, like, how do we use like a franticness and an overwhelm that is based in just surviving and getting by? How do we create that experience for ourselves intentionally so that we don't have to leave our comfort zone? It's a really great question. I find it, everyone struggles with this in some way, shape, or form. A lot of times it's people who are like, well, I just don't have the time. Like, oh, I would work on myself. It's a great one. I would work on myself. I would spend more time on my relationship with myself and getting clear on what I wanted, but I don't have the time. I don't have the time to do that, which is kind of funny, right? Because part of it is like, oh, I get that. Doesn't have the time. But in reality, you're 100% responsible for where your time goes. And so in that case, what's happening is you're using time as an excuse to stay inside of your comfort zone. Because what happens if you start to make the time to focus on you and focus on what you want? You have to change things. Things would have to change. You'd have to leave your comfort zone. You'd have to address your insecurities and fears. You'd have to address the things that aren't working. You'd have to have really uncomfortable conversations. And so in a way, it's easier to not have the time than it is to make the time to understand, okay, what are the things that need to shift? And so there you're creating this sense of, I don't have enough. There's not enough. There's like a franticness. There's a scarcity to it, a survival to it that keeps your comfort zone intact. I know this very intimately. I had a very similar flavor of this with being overwhelmed. And so my story for a long time was I can't create the experience that I want. I can't take care of myself. I can't slow down because I have too much to do. There are too many things to do, too many priorities, too many commitments, which is silly because that was my choice. I was choosing to say yes to new things and choosing not to say no to things that I didn't have time for. So in a way, it was easier to be overwhelmed, to not have enough energy, to feel burned out all the time than it was to do the really scary thing, which was to say no to things, which was to take commitments off my plate, which was to be honest with myself and create a different experience for myself. That was scarier than just staying in overwhelm. So regardless of whatever that flavor is for you, if you don't have enough time, don't have enough energy, circumstances are too overwhelming, other people are creating some experience for you. That's a big one too. Like, I can't do this because other people are or are not doing something. Looking at all of those pieces, a lot of times it's just easier to continue to be a victim to those things, to continue to be at the effect of those things, than it is to take ownership of all of it, take responsibility of all of it, and then leave our comfort zone where we need to. And a lot of times leaving our comfort zone in those situations is going to be doing the inner work. It's going to be less about the circumstantial pieces and having conversations with people. And it's going to be more about, what are we not taking ownership of as people? What are the conversations that I'm afraid to have? Where am I afraid to be intimate or vulnerable with myself or others? The really scary conversations. But again, what we talked about at the beginning, that's where all the value is. That's where all the gold is. Everything that you're looking for, if you're watching this, whether it's now or later, and you're thinking about all the things that you want to create in your life, you want to create the job and the career that you really love. You want to create the relationship with the partner or partners that you really, really love, and the family. You want to take care of yourself. You want to feel good in your body. You want to feel energetically sourced. You want to feel physically strong, mentally strong, emotionally strong. All of those things are possible, but they require leaving your comfort zone over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's about making it a habit to systematically find, address, work through those pieces that you've been afraid to confront. And it's the intimate, vulnerable conversations that you don't want to have with other people. It's the going to therapy, nudgety nudge, nudge, wink, wink, going to therapy. Actually sitting down and taking time for yourself to journal and understand more about your emotional landscape and what's going on for you. It's those things that are going to make the difference. Because when you start with you, when you leave your comfort zone in your relationship with yourself, that's what makes the difference over time. Because you become more aware of yourself, you accept yourself more, you eliminate or reduce the insecurities that you have that are stopping you from being powerful and going after what you want. You get more comfortable with vulnerability. You get more comfortable with being direct with people, being powerful with people. And when you shift those things about yourself, all of the external stuff that we mentioned, so the relationship, the well-being, the job, the etc., all show up. Those are the things that get created. And even better, your experience of life then on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis is so much more joyful, connected, present, peaceful, etc. So yeah, bottom line, leave your comfort zone. Make it a game. Make it a game. Sit down each week. I used to do this. I looked at what's my fear list? I literally wrote down what are all the things that I'm afraid of, and what's one action that I can take towards all of these things. Get supported. Go talk to a therapist or a healer. Go talk to a coach. Don't do it alone. Do it in relationship with other people. And become more self-aware. Journal, document, understand and start to see the patterns in your own behavior that are keeping you stuck and keeping you inside of your comfort zone. And if you ever want to talk about any of those things, hit me up. Always down to support, help, coach, and just talk about it. So yeah. Hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. I will be back next week. Don't know what I'm talking about yet. So if you have any suggestions or questions, things that you want to hear more about in the personal development, growth space, coaching space, leave a comment. Let me know. And I'll see you soon.